Right, let me do the introduction. So on my left here is Gerry Morrissey, who I'm sure many of you know. Gerry is the head of BECTU and will be able to answer questions on a number of subjects. Some of them he's expert in, some of them it doesn't even matter, he won't, he'll still answer it. Spencer MacDonald is next. Spencer is a National Secretary of BECTU who specifically looks after our freelance areas, the LPD and RPD branches. Was instrumental in the very historic film negotiations that we recently did, signing the new agreement with PACT, which I'm sure, again, many of you will have followed. So that's Spencer and Gerry. Then we have Victoria Phillips from Thompsons Solicitors. Vicky is the head of employment rights at Thompsons, has a long relationship with our union, and again can cover all kinds of questions that may come up. Just looking quite scared. I don't know what you're going to ask, but we'll play it by ear. And at the end of our row there we have Tony Lennon, who is a research officer at BECTU. Tony really is the industry expert at BECTU, looks and advises on all matters of freelance areas and contracts in the industry and trends and all that kind of stuff. So that really is the panel of experts. There they are, and I'm just going to now throw it straight over and say, does anybody want to ask a question? And I knew that was going to happen. None of you. Anything you can ask. Oh, you are my favourite person in the room. Thank you. If you can introduce yourself, if you're happy to, and then anything you like.
Hi, I'm Lubna, and I've spoken to Tony a number of times, various questions. There's been a long discussion on Facebook on Viva la PD about rates for production in TV.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that BECTU on its site doesn't have rates for TV production. There's a huge discussion going on what rates people should be on for what they're doing. Is BECTU going to do anything about that? Because we need help out there for negotiating.
Okay. They're going to fight over it. They are fighting over who's going to go first. So Spencer's going to go.
Hello there. Spencer MacDonald. Just in terms of the TV rates, we have got quite a number of rate cards up there. What we tend to do is give the branches the autonomy in terms of deciding what rates should be published. So sometimes they're really good in terms of publishing rates for film, for for commercials, even outside of the APA agreement, those sorts of things. And even dramas, but not necessarily for factuals and some of the other particular areas like light entertainment. But it all comes down to how well organised those particular branches are in terms of gathering that information, putting it together, and those sorts of things. Because I think out of all the branches that we've got something like 20 branches in LPD and another 14 branches in RPD. I'd say the majority of them have got rate cards that are functioning. So across most of the union, we have got rate cards. Whether they actually cover all the particular areas is another question. But certainly for major motion pictures we have, and certainly for TV dramas, but not necessarily for factual and light entertainment, but not across every area.
Just picking, I think the key point is that the rates have to be realistic, and they have to be what is actually happening out there, not ones that are just picked out by the union or representatives. So TV drama rates, we have got an agreement with the BBC. We've had that for several years. That's published. Those are the rates as a minimum that people get. Spencer is correct. A lot of the branches will then set their own rates. As a union, we don't allow them to just pick any figure. They've got to do some research in it. So, for example, live events is a new area for the union. And in live events, we don't know what the rates that are being paid there at the moment. There's 2,000 people who have joined the union there. A lot of them have joined it for public liability insurance, etc. But they now want to see exactly what we've got in film and TV drama, where they know the rates. So we're saying, you've got to tell us. So we're doing the research with them. So it depends on the genre. Drama is fairly well covered. Documentary, shiny floors, all of that is less covered. If the union can't just pick up the rates, we've got to be guided by the membership out there. So it's important you get involved with the branch does the research, then it sets the rate card, the union approves it and posts it.
Okay, does that help? Good. And I think the key message in that is that we're a membership-led organisation, so we absolutely have to work with our members. Our members form our branches, and that's where we go from. Right. Anybody else have a question? Loads of questions now. We'll take the lady at the front and then we'll come over to you.
What responsibility, if any, does BECTU have towards foreign crews employed by foreign partners on a feature film production?
Okay, an excellent question.
Okay, so when you say responsibility, we've got no responsibility because they're not members of BECTU. That's the formal answer. However, BECTU is part of UNIME as an international, and we represent UNIME. As part of that, we have fraternal arrangements. So if there's BECTU members working in America, Germany, or whatever, if they fall into a difficulty there, our appropriate union, IATSE, Verdi in Germany, etc., would actually represent people locally. We would be responsible for all legal stuff, but they would do that. We do exactly the same thing here. So if there was a German crew working here, there was a difficulty, then our sister union in Germany would contact us and we would give them whatever support we could give them. But technically, on the answer to your question, we have no legal responsibility, but we do support on that basis, just like we would expect our members to be supported in one of those countries if they were there, and that's covered by, the UNIME banner. Does that help?
But supposing there's no local body that looks after the rights and pay of local workers.
When they're working abroad?
Yes.
Yes. Well, we've had that on a number of occasions. We've had one of our senior executive members, Nick Ray, from the Grips branch, who was in Romania, I think, at the time when they were doing the shooting there, and he felt that the workers there were being abused, and he raised it with us. We tried to raise it through employers associations, etc. So all we can do is give that kind of moral support. But again, on that circumstance, we actually went to uni so that uni could write letters to the foreign officers there, etc., etc. But we are not in a position, if the question is leading towards saying to the crew, withdraw. That would only ever happen if we felt that the crew was in some way there was a health and safety risk to them, because people are signing contracts and they've got to fulfil those contracts.
Interesting, thank you. Oh, Tony, did you
can I just add, Sue? We liaise with the Home Office, it's now the Visas and Immigration Department, about the access that foreign workers in the film industry get to the UK, because they require sponsorship certificates under the points-based immigration system. And contrary to what you keep hearing Nigel Farage say, we do have a points-based immigration system, and it's really tough, because I deal with it quite a lot. The numbers we get are tiny. They're absolutely tiny. We've never seen a complete foreign crew in my time, and all we see are really skilled, high-end, creatives or heads of department who come through in very, very small numbers. They're brought in usually for either their world reputation or the continuity, because they've been doing shooting in other territories. And the multiplier effect of these people coming in is gigantic. If you're a big US artist and you say, I want to bring my own makeup assistant because I always work with her or him, right? And the producer gets wind of the fact that actually if you can't bring them into the UK, they're going to be arguing to go somewhere else. Then they're allowed in, and you get a massive multiplier with hundreds of people getting work off that production, which might have gone elsewhere if we were being 100% tight on our migration policies.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Okay, your question.
My name's Andy Lewis. I'm a member of BECTU and of Equity, and I've just realised the question I'm going to ask is actually more to equity than BECTU, but I'll ask it anyway. I've just come from the sexual harassment, so this is really to Victoria lecture, and I've also finished drama school about 2 years ago, and a couple of times during that I felt very uncomfortable because of the reaction between some of the younger male students and the younger female students. In fact, I think the male students were getting a little bit too testosterone loaded. I felt that they were taking advantage of the girls. And my question was going to be, shouldn't Equity be approaching all of the schools, the film schools and the teaching schools for drama students, to actually appear? I was in drama school for 2 years, and we never saw anybody from Equity or from BECTU come to that. And I was just wondering whether, in fact, BECTU ought to be going into schools more and also to generate members.
Shall I deal with sexual harassment then? Because and express a family. What's the word? My son has just come out of acting school, and we had you know, as all parents, I've tried to bring up sons to be good models and role models and treat women with respect. And he was very exercised on a number of occasions about how some of his fellow students were treating women and other people from different ethnic minorities. And it did seem to me that there wasn't very much focus on proper behaviours in a workplace, and particularly a vulnerable workplace, for those students who are, you know, as you know yourself, you're in a very wrong position. You're trying to get work and trying to get an agent and all those kind of things. So I think there's a lot of work that could be done to remodel industries through universities and drama schools. There's lots going on in the press at the moment about some of the disgusting race discrimination that's going on in some universities that really isn't being tackled by the universities themselves. And I think all educational institutions have got a responsibility to ensure that they're safe places. Actually, they're bringing up the next generation, so they should know how to behave in the work in the workplace, and that those things just aren't acceptable. Because you know that sort of laddish culture is very intimidating to women in drama schools, but also at university. So I think it's an issue for our whole society, how we treat each other with dignity.
Thank you. Spencer, did you want to?
Yeah, I think just in terms of equity, they suffer from the same problem that we do. So in terms of the number of courses that are actually in the industry, there's thousands of them, absolutely thousands. So it's impossible for the union to actually get round to every single course, and most of those people probably aren't even going to enter into the industry. So equity do actually go around some of the drama colleges, but some of the ones really that are more connected with the industry. And equally we do the same. So we go to the Bournemouth, we go to the NFTS, all the big colleges, but we don't go to all of them because there's absolutely like I said, hundreds and hundreds of them. But we do that, for a whole manner of reasons, not just in terms of what you said, but trying to make the connection between the union and them actually coming into the industry. Because most people these days, unfortunately, that are coming through haven't come from a culture where there's a trade union background. So even we have to start from the basics, what's a trade union, and all the rest of it, and what's our role. So, but we do quite a bit of that, because we try to get them when they're younger, so when they're coming into the industry, they've actually heard about the union rather than actually getting on to a production, hitting a problem and think, where do I actually turn to? So we do quite a bit of that already.
I think maybe it's worth just saying from the Time's Up point of view as well on that what we've done and the work that we were talking about in the seminar earlier on is I think take a massive leap forward in terms of grasping an opportunity by the issue being so topical. And the standards that we've talked about across the industry, those principles that we've agreed with BAFTA and the BFI and all the rest of it, we're doing a similar set of work within arts and theatre as well. And that will all start to filter down. It's not going to be overnight, but it's about saying what does acceptable behaviour look like. And I think in our, in the creative industries, you can very easily wander into some areas of interaction without being clear about where those boundaries are and forgive stuff that you shouldn't. And so I think by having those industry standards that we are all signing up to, and that we're all now talking about how do we make those principles not just be a statement, but something that we're all understanding and remembering and living by, and all the rest of it, that we can start to make a difference. So I think we're all making quite important steps in the right direction. It's just has taken too long already, and we're impatient for change, and rightly so. So, I'm kind of justifying ourselves, but also saying keep the pressure on because, the pressure is needed. Okay. Tony, yes.
I also occasionally go and talk to students, really being asked by academics, can you come and explain what life as a freelancer is like? Because I'm in the media studies department and they'll probably end up being freelancers, the current climate. It's interesting, two things strike me about the body of students that you talk to. One, there's a very low level of expectation about how they will be treated when they get into the world of film, television and theatre. And it's not just naivety, in many cases they kind of know what it's like, but are so committed to working in that sector that they are prepared to go and do this work for nothing type thing, this fake internship and all the abuses that we know about. And I'm a wee bit concerned that there's an education job to be done here to raise expectations, and I don't think it's just our part of the economy where it's a problem. I mean, I've got two 25-year-old kids, sorry, one 25, one 22, and when I say to them, this student loan you've built up, I'm trying to pay a bit of it off, but you know, what are you going to do when they start charging? You know, the answer often is, well, I'll probably never hit the threshold for being for compulsory repayment. Now, the threshold is about 21,600 at the moment, which is about nearly 20% below the median wage in this country. So we've got a problem. Back to the students I've spoken to, the other thing that really has struck me, this has been consistent, is the number of EU students who are in the groups. And when you talk to them afterwards about, you're Spanish, aren't you? Why are you here? They've come to the UK to be trained because they regard it as a world centre for skills in our industry at all levels, you know, from the artistic side, you know, right through to going up a lighting tower and doing a bit of rigging. I mean, and we mustn't underestimate the importance of our industry and its reputation on a worldwide basis. But we've got to get some of these young people through to acquire the world-class skills that we offer at the moment before a whole generation of people in our industry slowly start to fade away, which is what's happening.
That's a really good point. Okay, there's a hand, yes.
Hi, my name is Ollie. I'm an AD, freelancer AD. First, I've got two questions, if that's all right.
It's
On
perfect.
different subjects, so something for everyone, hopefully. First is on bullying and harassment, which thank you for the seminar earlier. It's very informative. On my last production, we had lots of speeches, lots of notes on the call sheets with platitudes about coming forward and all this. But when it came down to it, it became apparent that, you know, this doesn't really apply to the talent and to directors, where, you know, on a daily basis you're witnessing or being, you know, bullied, especially in, you know, certain departments. Now, as a sort of department supervisor, you know, I had people come forward to me and I witnessed things and I quickly got them sorted if it was in my department or somebody doing it to a member of my department. Now, I think we're all kind of at the mercy of whether your HOD or your supervisor is sympathetic to that, and, you know, if they're not, then you're in trouble. What I've noticed is every production company has a kind of, now they've got an anonymous helpline thing they want to put on the bottom of the call sheet, but it's the same problem with politics, with different political parties wanting their own internal system, that people still feel they're unable to come forward because they will eventually get found out. It's a very close, you know, it's a very small community, really. My kind of question was, is there anything to kind of push for this? I know you mentioned there was a phone number, a line, but if that was even on the call sheet, on every call sheet, and every production has to do that, like, is that so people know that there is an independent thing out there that they can come forward to, which isn't the production company and the producer, because, you know, like, as I was just saying, if the producer, you know, wants to get rid of it, they'll get rid of it. They don't, they'll push it under the carpet. So that was my first one, was can we push for something that's an independent thing and that crew all know about, and it's on every information everywhere, even plastered on sets everywhere. Second one, unfortunately, is about the new crew deal, and it's about working hours, which is, I think in one of the clauses about it, it's about basically your working hours is the camera day 11 plus 1 plus whatever you've agreed with the line producer or production. As a second AD, you know, I've come from 5 years ago just being expected to do all my hours without claiming overtime. Then we're down to an hour and a half on top of the camera day. And now it seems, I think the ADs are saying it's 1 hour now, but when I'm in discussions with line producers, they're like, oh, you know, well, it's an hour and a half or something. Is there a sort of clear definition what that is and what our working day is? And is that going to be cleared up anytime soon? Do we know?
Is that for TV drama or?
Yeah, for PACT. Yeah, PACT.
Yeah, but TV or film?
The PACT BECTU TV agreement that came out end of last year. Yeah, sorry, not the latest one, the TV one.
Do you want to do that, Spencer, now?
Shall I do? Yeah.
Yeah, go and do that, and then we'll go back to the bullying stuff, and Gerry can tell you about the phone line.
So under the TV drama agreement, what we wanted to try and establish is that there was lots of departments, say the ADs, locations, hair and makeup, and costume wardrobe, doing lots and lots of prep and wrap. but it was just built into, you know, whatever the rate was that, you know, it was agreed, and it wasn't clear, you know, when it actually, you know, started and finished. So part of the negotiations was we needed to establish that in the deal memo up front, so that needs to be clear. So everyone could be clear in terms of when they negotiated their rate, they knew what was required of them, you know, at the beginning of the day and the end of the day. So the deal memo should be issued to you, you know, before you even, you know, start the production. So there's two parts to it. You know, one is the, you know, the prep and wrap, and then there's a customary, you know, prep and wrap. And I don't know if productions are actually getting confused by this, because there's been certain jobs, you know, where they've been phoning up and saying, well, actually, customary prep and wrap is now just prep and wrap. And we're saying, well, no, there's a clear distinction between customary, which is about just getting yourself ready, you know, to do the job, and then there's the other, you know, prep and wrap. So I think, you know, we've tried to do a joint set of words, you know, with the employers, pact, to actually try and clear that up, because the word in the current agreement at the moment is confusing. They look at it and interpret it, you know, completely differently how it was intended to you know, be implemented. So we've just agreed a form of words which we're going to, you know, circulate to hopefully demystify this thing about, you know, the prep and wrap. But the idea of it was, in terms of the TV drama, was that it'd be really, really clear up front. So if you're agreeing your rate, you know, whatever the AD's rate is, that you would know at the beginning what your prep and wrap would be. So what they would require you to come in, what time they require you to come in, or what time that they require you to leave. So you can negotiate that rate around that. But they should be doing that up front. Just also on that, you know, on the TV drama agreement, we've actually got a procedure in there as well in terms of, you know, if there is issues, you know, like you said, in terms of the bullying, you can actually, you know, contact the office and we can actually, you know, pick those things up. So the agreement isn't just about, you know, terms and conditions, it's about actually, you know, addressing those particular issues as well. And that's what we're hoping to achieve also in, you know, the film agreement and, you know, the other agreements if we can get it with, you know, the APO for commercials. So it's much broader than just, you know, terms and conditions. But if there's any confusion about, you know, when the production says, well, actually, we want you in, you know, a little bit earlier, you know, you have to determine what was customary before the actual agreement actually come in. So did you actually come in, you know, an hour before? Was it just 15 minutes to put your mic on, or, you know, whatever you might have been doing to, you know, or getting stuff off the truck? What was it you did before? So that's what you should be agreeing, and then adjusting your rate to accommodate, you know, the hours they're actually asking you to do.
Yeah, just picking up on this, I think a lot of it was covered in the earlier session, but in addition to that, just highlight something. By having the consistency you're asking for, so this is on all the deal memos, it's on all the call sheets, etc., then there's a body under the BFI, which is meeting, and we're part of that group.
Yes, yeah.
And even most of the employers are part of that group. And actually, so what we'll do is I'll feed that point in to my colleague Helen Ryan, who's sitting on that group, to make sure that that issue gets on there, because otherwise all it will end up being is a minimum standards with each employer being able to choose which bits they want to implement. The biggest danger, as you've highlighted anyway, in the freelance sector is that people are afraid to step up and talk to their employers about it because they may not get another job. And it isn't just limited to bullying and harassment, it's long hours culture at work, it's everything. You mean in a very, people see themselves in a very precarious position if you're a freelancer. You want to come back, and that's why we've seen an awful lot of the stuff that's come out in the last 12 to 18 months. So therefore, having the independent helpline is helpful, informing people about the helpline so everybody knows we've all got a duty in that. And therefore I think it's a good idea. I can't see any reason why it shouldn't happen. And I think if some of the employers refuse to do it, the union should have a name and shame, in the sense of being able to say, here we are 6 months, 9 months down the road, here are all the employers who are doing ABC as directed by the BFI schedule, here are the employers who are not doing it. We've had the same issue in relation to ethnic monitoring, etc. as well. You mean some employers decide, yeah, we do that, but actually in reality they don't hand the forms out, etc. So there's no difference in the sense, it's tokenism. And what we've got to make sure here is that actually they're not just paying lip service to this issue, that they genuinely do want you to hear of concerns that are raised. And I think the idea of having the telephone number on the call sheets is a good idea. And any other ideas?
Yeah, absolutely, and of course that's on our website, so members can access that. Right, any other questions in any direction? Tony, it's not.
You're not allowed to ask questions.
I was going to say you're one of the experts. Right, we've got a question at the back.
Hi, I'm Andrew Mason and I'm on the WPD. I was at Lubna made before. And Gerry, I think you said that it was really up to the branch to agitate to get this rate card sorted for production teams. Well, do you know what? I think you really need to put out a kind of a clarion call to the branch to get this sorted, because I see the differentials in what people are paid for APs on my productions as a huge yawning gap. You know, two people can be similarly qualified, similarly experienced. One's on 690 quid, one's on 890, 900. And, you know, I don't think it's fair on individuals not to be given a sense of what is the going rate for a job with similar qualifications. I think the union should take a lead on it, to be honest,
right,
and put out a clarion call to our branch to get this sorted.
Well, as you say, Angie, you're on the branch committee, so you can do that for me. But in addition to that, what I would say overall is that it's actually down, when I say it's down to the branches, I said to actually make sure that the rates are validated. The reality is, regardless of whether you're talking about the lighting technicians branch, the WPD branch, etc., there are some branches where the representatives on there work in a certain genre. And if they work in that genre as the representatives, they know what the rates are. And that's why so many of our people work in drama and why we're ahead of the game in drama. When we tried to do it, as you well know, in documentaries, even about 2 years ago, we got little feedback from people. And part of that was young people in there who felt vulnerable, who just come out of colleges, etc., and didn't feel they could stick their head above the parapet. We then, picking a rate out of the air, got us nowhere. So it isn't the sense that the union won't be involved in it, but the branches have to lead that with the union. The union is about the members, the representatives, and the union, and as head office then, we've got to actually direct that work. So the point, if I put it across badly, I apologise, is that the branches have to decide where we're going to concentrate on. And the WPDs have done this many times, so we can't, drama is fairly well covered now. If you moved on to into documentaries or shiny floors or whatever, then the branches need to do need to do that.
Will you make the resources available for us to get the information?
Yes, because it's most of the information is gathered online. We do online surveys. We put that up. There's no problem with the branches doing it, and there's no problem with head office supporting it. But there has to be somebody inside the branch who's got knowledge of that sector.
Spencer.
Yeah, just in terms of the rate cards, because the thing is, it's really quite important that we do actually get something. Gerry said it right at the beginning of the conversation about having something that's realistic. Because some of the branches have actually put rate cards together and said, actually, we want to aspire to get this rate, and then it goes up on the website, and everyone goes, oh, you know what, I'm never going to get that rate. So it's meaningless. So it's got to be realistic. But in terms of actually the footwork, it does need to come from the branches. And I look after the electricians and the grips. On rates, they're absolutely fantastic. If you ask them to organise this particular event, they'd fall apart. Rates, terms and conditions, they're absolutely fantastic. But they're the driving force behind that. If I said to them, we're going to do it from head office, they would scream their heads off. They would say, no, we want to do it because actually we're on the ground, we know the rate, what the rates are, we want to put it together. What's key to all this though is that we want to get a format that is the same across all the different departments. Because what we've got at the moment is we've got some of them are doing it by the hour, some of them are doing it by the day, and some of them are doing it by the week. So if we go into negotiations with the employers, on the TV drama, and we say, well, actually, we want an hourly rate over here and a daily rate over here and a weekly rate, we've got to have some uniformity to the rate cards. And so in terms of resources, it's about really trying to get the information out there to say to people, you need to actually give us this intelligence. Give us this information in terms of these productions. Over the last 3 to 6 months, what was the daily rate that you actually got? And what were the hours you actually worked? If we can get that information, we can collate it, put it together, and post it up on the website. And if that's what you want to achieve, that's not that's not an issue for the union.
And just following up on that, it's all about putting the rates up, and even getting the rates that people feel are realistic is only the beginning of it. Then it's about implementation, and implementation is about people being able to stick to it. Now, Spencer talked about the lighting technicians and the grips and that, who couldn't organise an event like this if they were there forever. But in relation to as a group, using the grapevine, which the union provides to those branches, they will then be in a position to say nobody will take a job below that rate. Now, you can only say that if you've got 80 or 90% of the constituency in the union. And outside of electricians and grips and a few others, most of them don't. And that's the reality of the industrial power on this end. So we get the rates up there, you organising it, putting the rate up on its own, and no members that are believing the rate are prepared to refuse rates below that, then is going to be, get us nowhere. So that it's part of the job. Head office is very much involved in that, but the branches have to engage in that process. And they do on certain genres, Angie, but they don't on some of the others.
But there seems to be a parallel universe going on with Facebook, though, that are doing a lot of the job that perhaps we should be doing. Is that right? No. There you go.
Well, yeah, but on the Facebook stuff, we're engaged in the Facebook, we get the conversations there, because we're trying to bring people into that discussion who are not inside, not in the union. Just going back, I didn't want to come in at the time in an earlier discussion about the union getting around to the colleges. It's about the union being able to bring as many people as possible into the discussions, knowing what they're doing. Anybody who is speaking to students, or if you're a student yourself, look at the union's Creative Toolkit website, which is run by the comms department. That gives information. We're not saying be a student member of the union. What we're saying is you don't need. We're giving you this information you will need to begin, which will help you so that when you come into the union, into the industry, you join the union and you come in with some knowledge of what you can actually expect. And I think then the next step on from there is about your pay, your terms, your conditions. And it's not going to be done in a day, but been around a long time. And I think in the last 4 to 5 years, we have been able to set more rates and hold more rates and hold the employers to account in the freelance areas more than we've ever done before. But that doesn't mean everywhere, and the independent production sector in TV is definitely the worst.
Okay. Any other questions, either on that or any other subject? Oh, and there's a microphone for you.
I'm going to change the subject. It's about copyright for a script.
Right.
Where can I go to get it copyrighted?
That's an excellent
ask me.
You can ask Tony. Yeah. Good question.
If you've written an original creative work, right, it's automatically copyright of you, all right? Right? The difficulty is enforcing those rights if anybody attempts to infringe them. We've got a copyright registration service where you can get your document physically dated by us, and you then put it away, and if at some time in the future somebody infringes your copyright, you've at least got evidence that you were an owner of that work at a particular point in time. Okay? It may be only part of the case that you need to make to prove there's been an infringement, but it's a free service, it's a benefit of membership, it's quite widely used, and a lot of our members are running into more and more copyright issues. I don't know what, you've written a script, you want to know that it's safe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's one of the things you can do, okay, for free. You get a date stamp on it, it then gets locked under a seal, you put it somewhere safe, and you've then got quite legally compelling evidence in the future that at a certain point in history, this was your work and no one else had created it.
And you just write to the union, so you just write to the union and you say, as a union member, I want this registered under the script registration scheme. A copy is done, that's stamped as Tony says, and then the original sent back to you. Yeah.
So how do I do that exactly?
You just write to the union's head office.
Yeah.
Titles.
I've got the details.
There's a landing page on the website.
Somebody here will give it to you. You've got to be a BECTU member.
Are you a BECTU member?
No, I'm not.
You've got to join the union
Perfect.
then, yeah.
So, but out on the front, at the front registration, you can join the union, and then you will get all the details.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much.
£7.50 for the first year is a special offer.
Okay.
I think my mic is broken.
A month, not for the year.
Tony, did you want to say
Just
something?
on copyright, once I've got the opportunity to talk to people, in the old days, in the audio-visual world, copyright was owned by independent production companies or big broadcasters. There was no question about where the rights lay, and everybody, except really, really world-renowned directors and writers, everybody had to assign their rights in writing when there was a contract, and that was the end of it. You didn't really think about copyright of your own work after that, unless you'd written a play as an independent artisan creator. These days, because it's so much easier to get into making audio-visual products, you don't need a big TV studio or a really expensive camera and sound recording kit. You can go down the high street and buy, broadcast standard stuff almost for a few £100s. We've got lots and lots and lots of people doing little projects. these often start as a collaboration, very loose collaboration between a group of people who have a good idea down the pub. That'd be really great to make. And you can do cameras, you can do sound, you know about editing. These projects either fail at a very early stage, or in my experience, they develop in ways that nobody quite predicted. They go to places that they never imagined they would go. And at some point, somebody in that collaborative group says, hey, I don't seem to be on the project anymore, but I've got copyright interests in it. And I then get the phone call, because I deal with the copyright issues in BECTU, and I can't tell you the number of times that I hear two things. When I say, was anything written down at the beginning of the project as to who owned it, and how you were going to divvy up any fiduciary and monetary benefits out of it, no, we didn't think we needed to. And that's almost invariable. Then at some point I will hear a phrase that I promise you, it turns up in about 70% of these calls. At some point the aggrieved party will say, and I thought they were my friend. I'm not joking, it's really like that. So on copyright, where things have become quite diffuse and it's quite difficult to work out who's really contributing to the creative work, my advice to people is always, no matter how friendly you all are, no matter how clear you think the trajectory of the project is at the beginning, do yourselves all a favour and write down exactly who's contributing what, who's going to get what back, and the circumstances in which there would have to be a reappraisal of those rights if the project really changed and someone did actually take it over. And if you wrote that down, my first question, is there anything in writing, would get the right answer, and I'd then be able to give people advice about what to do. But if it's not in writing, it's really quite difficult, especially if it's one of these small collaborative projects.
That's such good advice. Paul, do you want to come in on that?
I'm just going to an element on the copyright thing as well.
There's a microphone for you, even for you, Paul.
Just with the script registration scheme, there's something that I think that we ought to add to that, is that, as you know, you can't copyright an idea. You can copyright a picture, you can copyright a poem, you can copyright an article, you can copyright something like that, and you can copyright a script, something that's where it's he said, she said, and the exact thing. What you can't copyright is, we've got a great idea for a programme, it involves taking a load of people off to an island to do this, that and the other, and feed each other to snakes and that sort of thing. That's an idea, and you can't copyright it. What the script registration scheme has been established to do is that when you have an idea like that, then you register it, and it means that when you're showing it to broadcasters, that you can do so with a degree of confidence that if they take your idea, that you will then they'll be bound by a code that was drawn up by the Association for the Protection of Copyright, the APC. So it means that if you go to the BBC with an idea and they go thanks but no thanks, and 6 months later you see it on the screen, then that's when you come to the APC and say, look, I registered this, and there's a dispute resolution procedure in there. So what the union's done there is added a dimension to copyright protection.
Okay, there was a couple of other hands that came up. There's a man here, I've got so we'll come over here first. Oh, no, the microphone is, I'm sorry, the microphone's with you. There you go.
What's the good of having moral rights if you're then forced by a company that is going to take your work to sign it over to them? I find it impossible.
Okay.
Yeah. It's one of those tricky situations where the law gives you apparent strength, but it allows the party you're dealing with to take that strength away from you. Because effectively, you've probably seen the clause, you will be asked to waive your moral rights in whatever creative work that you have presented, or whatever creative contribution you've made to somebody's project. It's a difficult one to deal with because the law engages or production companies or others in a position where they're able to say to you, look, you can sign this contract if you want, but if you don't sign that clause, we're not going to sign the contract, and you're going to have to go off somewhere else and do it. To be honest, there's no simple solution to it, and it's become part and parcel of the industry's terms of trade, in the way that a lot of directors working for TV companies now, and a lot of creatives who've got some design rights, set designers and costume, they're asked to assign all their intellectual property rights, and it's done at the point of a gun, really. It's sign a contract or you ain't got a job. I mean, moral rights, incidentally, are they're not strictly of economic value, but they are of creative value, in the sense that moral rights actually give you, the creator, some role in having to authorise an end user of your creative product to modify it, to lampoon it, or to change it in ways that damage its integrity. But it does happen all the time, with things being reversioned and bits being lifted out and a whole host of things happening. So you don't lose money by waiving your moral rights, but you do lose the right in future to say, you can't do that to my film.
They don't take the work.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if anyone else has got a brilliant solution to the problem of people being told, if you don't sign the contract as it is, we don't want you. You know, the opt-out from the 48-hour maximum working week is another one, where you know in practice, if you strike that clause out in a contract, they're going to come back to you and say, excuse me, here's a fresh contract, sign the whole thing.
Okay, we had a hand at the back. Oh,
thank you.
Yeah.
Excuse me, my question is, with regards to copyright, does it cover all countries or only certain countries?
Yeah. It kind of depends. Most audiovisual product is done on a territorial basis. So if you make an audiovisual product in the UK, it can't be shown in most other territories without some licensing deal being arrived at. And in fact, a lot of independent films depend almost entirely on doing advanced foreign sales through a sales agent, particularly in Europe and in North America, to put together the budget for their movie. So they know they're going to, if it plays in Romania, we'll get £7,000, so put that in now. You know, if it plays in the States, we'll get 25, put it in now. And that's how they put their budgets together. But although the bulk of our copyright law at the moment has come from the European Union, actually it is defined on a territorial basis. There are a growing number of exceptions to this. I mean, there's the Portability Directive and the Retransmission Directive that have just recently come into power. The Portability one is aimed at online streaming services for audio-visual. If you've signed up to a provider in one country who provides that on-screen service in another EU country, you've got to get it at the same price as you pay in the UK. In other words, it's part of your UK bundle. Retransmission, much more complex, but there are certain genres of TV programmes where you can re-radiate in other European countries, provided you've got a licence in one of them, and you don't actually have to do any rights payments and clearances. Okay? Now, this is going to be a very interesting issue, right, after Brexit, because at the moment, the UK has about 1,400 channels being played out of UK technical centres, most of which are not destined for the UK. They're going to other places in the world, mostly Europe. If we are not part of the retransmission arrangements, then if you want to play out a channel from the UK to any other country, you will need clearances in that country, not just clearance in the UK. And there's a lot of debate at the moment about, it's a very high tech, very high paid, and we're a world leader in it, industry, but a lot of discussion going on at the moment about what the broadcasters, the foreign broadcasters mostly, who come here to get it done, what they will do.
We've strayed into Brexit as well, which is another of Tony's key areas, and I like to nod along as though I would have said the same thing, but I have no idea. So that's brilliant. Any other questions on that kind of topic? We've got about 8 minutes left. You're going to anyone want to get in anything else? So there's a flurry of hands. No. Okay, Paul, do you want to? Oh, there's yes, please. No, that's all right.
Question. Say, for example, you've got your own independent copyright service. Would that still be valid with your services? Or do you require that it has to go through BECTU?
No, we're in no way a licensing authority or a rights collector or anything like that. We don't do any of that. The script registration service is just helping you to give a bit of evidence that you might need in the future to prove that you were the author of a given work.
Just a free thing for members to assist them in the future should something go wrong. It's another bit of that peace of mind. Okay, anybody got anything else? Oh yeah, we've got a man here. And there's another hand at the back as well, so that's great.
I'm going to ask a question, bringing it back to rates. What should be the approach to new media content, which is falling between the conventional advertising or such content for for the internet content for Instagram and such. It's quite a difficult aspect, especially as a department head when you're bringing on sparks or grips and everything, and they want certain rates and stuff like that to apply. But then obviously the budgets are obviously considerably smaller. Just wonder, perhaps even an insight into that.
Okay, you mean that's it, and Spencer can come in as well if you want. Yeah. Again, you mean most of our branches say, you mean that actually we've got a daily, you use the electricians or grips or whatever, we've got a daily rate, that's the rate of pay we expect to get paid regardless of whether it's a 45 million budget, you mean 5 million budget or commercial or whatever, because we've still got to live, etc. Obviously the ability to pay comes into it, but you mean, so we set the rates, you mean on the genre, you mean, and we don't, with the exception of the feature film agreement, the new one we've signed, actually put rates into it at all, because our members' argument to us, we're a membership-based organisation, is actually, you know, we're still putting in the same level of work. And the argument is that the smaller the production, the more work that's required of us, because there's, you mean, less crew, less support around, etc. So that doesn't mean that people won't have a discussion with you about the rate, but it wouldn't change our rate card, because that would be done on the basis of, you mean, a day's work is what X.
Can I just add to that? Because let's be honest, the problem of rates depends on how much money the producer's got, and the smaller the budget, then the more argument there's going to be about rates. I bring you some good news, which might not cheer all of you up. I look after film stats, and the most reliable source of film statistics in this country is the British Film Institute. About 8 years ago, the British Film Institute introduced a new band when it was reporting budgets, all right? Because they used to report from 0 to 5 million, 5 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 and upwards. And they introduced a band of below £500,000. And the reason they did it was that the statistics were being terribly distorted. It looked like we were making millions of films, right, below £5 million, when actually we were making hardly any, right? And it was the real low micro-budget things that were distorting it. So they introduced this new band, below £500,000, and in the first year there were over 200 recorded, right? And the number gradually went up until about 4 years ago. In the last 4 years, the number of sub £500,000 films reported by the BFI dropped by more than 60%. And if you talk to people in the business, the simple reason for that is they don't make money. Simple as that. They don't make money. So they're drying up. I suppose the corollary of that ought to be good news, which is that where there is production going on, we're seeing bigger budgets, and certainly on high-end television, we're seeing budgets that you would never have dreamed of in TV in the old days. You know, American series running at $13 to $15 million an hour. I mean, this is unprecedented stuff. And that's taken, high-end TV has taken feature and TV production, and only high-end TV production, up to £2.6 billion last year. And that's up from about 1.5, only 4 years before.
Yeah, I think there is there's a real pressure on, rates at the moment, because the thing is that the curve has definitely, turned in terms of, the crew. So they've been, in a much stronger position, for all the reasons, Tony talked about. Fantastic amount of, inward investment. The studios are, building loads and loads of stages. In fact, they're going to build another, new studio over at, East London in Dagenham. £100 million they're going to spend there. So it shows that, the long-term future of, the industry is only growing. And the thing is, the BFI skills audit showed that there was going to be a minimum of, 10,000 new people over, the next 5 years that they're going to need on top of, the people they've already got. So that puts a downward pressure on, the rates. So I think your question was about, there's different platforms now, isn't there, for advertising. Whereas before there was only the traditional one, which was, on the telly and on, the cinema. Now there's a huge number of, ways you can actually, screen things, to advertise. Now, going back in the days, people used to say, is an ident, an advert? Our members' view is an ident is an advert. Someone would come to us and say, is a charity, job, should we, charge less for the rates on that? They would say they charge exactly the same. Equally, for other, social media platforms as well, they're saying it's an advert. So therefore, if it's an advert, it's commercial, and for commercial, should be charging the commercial rate. So I think where you're seeing the pressure is where, the branches, where, the union is really quite strong and active. So where you're saying, like the electricians and the grips, when we talked about, the rates earlier on, that's really where, that's their industrial strength. That's what they do, every day. They network fantastically well. So if there is a job coming up, you know, and it's not paying the appropriate rate that's, you know, in accordance with, you know, what the union's actually, you know, requested, then no one actually touches it. So they actually managed to keep, you know, the rates up. Other departments are slowly getting there in terms of, you know, networking and making sure that, you know, they can get this information around. But I think it's for the employers really to come to us and say, look, there are different platforms now. There should be, you know, a discussion around, you know, how we actually, you know, manage this. But the thing is, we're not going to invite that because, you know, we've got a position at the moment where, you know, industrially, you know, these branches are, you know, getting those rates that they're requesting, and the employers are actually having to pay them.
And there isn't, even sorry, just a final point on this. I mean, it might sound as we're saying, well, that's the rate, take it or leave it. We want the opportunity for individuals coming into the industry to be able to get some work out of that. We don't want them to be exploited. And actually, I mean, when all the tax breaks came in, not a single employer came to the union and said, we've had, 20% tax breaks, we want to give more money to your members, right? And so these things go in cycles, and therefore at the moment the cycle is that actually there is a huge amount of production in the country. Yes, the technical skills are great here, but actually one of the reasons, and I'll whisper this, is because of George Osborne and the tax breaks. And that brought people in that they were prepared to invest, and it's economic with the exchange rates and everything else, they're here, and therefore if there's a lot of work here at the moment, our members expect to get paid the going rate. If the work disappeared, they're then going to have to review their rates. That's the reality.
Okay, we are seriously running out of time. Tony, is it a quick thing?
Yes, we've just done film tax. Can I give you a question to put to the audience? Why hasn't anyone asked about freelance tax?
Well, you're embarrassed now, aren't you? Do you want to say anything more about that, or are you just leaving that question?
No, keep your eyes on the Union Journal and the Union website over about the next 9 months. There's a lot going on around freelance tax, and we don't know quite where it's going to end up.
So we are going to run out of time. So perhaps if there are outstanding questions, I'm sure you can grab these guys afterwards. Paul, did you want to come in and say something? Oh,
Roger.
Is there another? Yeah. Oh, have you got the microphone? I beg your pardon. Oh,
snatched it out of his hand.
We'll take it quickly. He's going to be quick.
You're probably not going to like it, but Tony, you touched on the dreaded B word just now. So this time last year, we had a couple of sessions on Brexit, and the conclusion was no one knows anything. A year on, is there any progress? Does anyone know anything? Very in a succinct yes or no manner.
No, I think
the key things we want to know are freedom of movement of labour. What will the new immigration system for EU citizens look like? Where does work fit into it? What about movement of goods? We're still debating whether we're in a customs union of some sort, or are we back to the dreaded world of crossing borders with a carnet and a licence for the vehicle and a work permit for the driver? What about European funding from Creative Europe and various other funding streams? Will that be replicated by the UK government? And within our own membership and workforce, I mean, how many skilled EU people might think we're not really keen on the UK anymore and disappear? So those are the sorts of key issues that are floating around. That we're no further forward, I'm afraid, in terms of knowing the answer for our sector than we really were last year.
So no is the answer.
Yeah. Okay.